Good morning, everybody, and welcome in to the Phillip Jordan Podcast here on my YouTube channel, the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the channel. Good Friday morning, everybody, back here on the podcast. A little bit of a change, obviously, you noticed there with the name. But we are here on Friday morning, going to bring you a good 30 to 40-minute show to get y'all guys started with the day where the weekend is almost here. Of course, my name is Phillip Jordan, last word on college football writer, mostly Auburn stuff over there. And, of course, you can check me out on 96.9 The Legend as the in-studio host and producer of What's Football. Got a fun show planned for you guys today. We're going to be jumping into the NFL today. I know college football is usually the dominant force here on this channel and this show. But probably once a week, we're going to be talking NFL. I have an NFL writer, someone maybe covers a team. That'll probably lean into teams in the Southeast. We got about 7-8 teams in the Southeast when we talk about here on a regular basis. But every now and then, maybe a national NFL writer. But pretty much the rest of the week, especially during football season, will be college football focused. But once a week, we're going to be bringing an NFL writer on. And you say, once a week? How many shows are you doing a week? So we're in the slow process here on the channel of going 5 days a week. Did 2 this week. Of course, earlier on, we had the show on Tuesday. We're going to be slowly transition. Next week, we'll have 3 podcasts, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Got the guests lined up for that. And then the following week, the plan is to go 5 days a week. So that's how we're going. Now, during the college football season, Mondays will just be me going over the weekend, what happened in college football. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and hopefully Friday, we'll have guests. Be talking people. I'll break stuff down. And since I'm going to go daily, we're going to keep the show around the 30-minute range. But you say today's show, I will be joined by Trey Downey. He is the host of the Bucs Nation Podcast over at SB Nation. We will be previewing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, talking about Tom Brady. I guess if I'm going to do our first NFL-centric episode, no better topic than centered around the GOAT of the National Football League. And we'll get that in a few minutes. But I got a top story. That's kind of how we're going to start things off here today. Before we do that, let you guys know you can find me in the podcast. You can find me on social media at PJordan SEC. The podcast available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just wherever you get your podcast. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Podcast. It also, of course, we are live right now on YouTube. If you're watching the live video, please go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification for the bell for notification so you can get any video. You'll be notified there. And then also leave a comment on the video. Leave a comment on the video. I will read it on a future edition of the show. And since we are live, if you're part of the live audience right now, put a question out. Put a question out on YouTube, and I'll be glad to respond to your comment, question, anything. And please put in those reviews. Like I said, Apple Podcasts. Really appreciate that. So before I jump into my conversation with Trey Downey, which is pre-recorded, I'll let you guys know that the guest conversations are pre-recorded. I'm not asking people to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, which kind of came in late today, 6:30 on the day's episode. Try to keep consistent with the 6 o'clock time. But my top story is news on Thursday. Now, the initial plan for today was I was going to rank the SEC quarterbacks. But then John Calipari gave us content. So we'll push the SEC rankings to another opening of a show. If we don't get some big news one day, I'll do that. But John Calipari, because Kentucky basketball is in the Bahamas right now, playing a few games, something they do. Auburn was just in Israel. Arkansas is doing international tour. A lot of these teams are going to different countries playing games right now. And we'll talk more about the basketball stuff next week on the show. Talking with the Athletics, Kyle Tucker, John Calipari had some comments that's kind of triggered some people. Very interesting comments as well. Talking about Kentucky is a basketball school, which, okay, before we kind of jump into what he said, he's not wrong here. Kentucky is a basketball school, but maybe he shouldn't have said it, especially it's about to be football season. But like I said, he wants a new basketball facility is pretty much what he's saying. And he's talking about how basketball should be the top priority here. So let's look at his comments he made to Kyle Tucker of The Athletic. This is a basketball school. It's always been that. Alabama's a football school. So is Georgia. I mean, they are. No disrespect to our football team. I hope they win 10 games and go to bowls. At the end of the day, that makes my job easier, and it makes the job of all of us easier. But this is a basketball school, so we need to keep moving in that direction and keep doing what we're doing. And as I said here, he's not wrong with his comments. I mean, that has put a big stir with the Kentucky football people. Mark Stoops retweeted it and said this: basketball school, I thought we competed in the SEC, hashtag 4 straight postseason wins. But also saying that Kentucky basketball is the pure dominant force at that university in athletics is also wrong. And I think that's what Calipari is trying to say here. Mark Stoops has had a couple 10-win seasons. They've gone to bowls. They've won 4 straight bowl games. Kentucky basketball has not won a postseason game since 2019. Of course, you can't count 2020 because there was no NCAA tournament that year. But still, Kentucky basketball one time, obviously they were the dominant team. I mean, Mark Stoops had a rough start at Kentucky. First 2 seasons were not good there. And year 3 started out that way too, but he's really riding the ship. And Mark Stoops is one of the best coaches, not only in the SEC, but college football as a whole. I mean, Calipari's using that to kind of, like I said, circling back. He wants to get the new facilities and stuff like that, practice facility there at Kentucky. I don't think the way he did it was correct, though, because it is insulting to the football program, what he said. And then Brian Harsin at Auburn, they had some fun with this. He posted a picture of him and Bruce Pearl and hashtag everything school at Auburn. Of course, the comment from Bruce Pearl last year when Auburn beat Kentucky that Auburn is an everything school. So it's interesting. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about John Calipari's comments about Kentucky football and basketball? That Kentucky is a basketball school. He's not wrong, but the way he went about it probably wasn't the best way of doing it. So what you guys think? And post a comment below. Leave me a review. Hit me up on Twitter at PJordanSEC. All right, guys. Now we're going to jump into today's featured guest, which is Trey Downey, host of the Bucs Nation Podcast, and we are going to preview the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right here on the Phillip Jordan Podcast. All right, joining me on the show today, we're jumping into the National Football League, talking about a team I think is going to win the NFC this season. Trey Downey, he covers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Bucs Nation's podcast host. And Trey, we did this last year, but I do appreciate you coming on the show and talking some Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No problem, man. Anytime.
I know it's a good time. You're right. We know football season is when we got preseason, we got training camps, college and pro teams are in camp. Even for me, high school football it is an exciting time of the year when we get close to the football season.
It definitely is. Best time of the year.
You're never going to get an argument out of me on that one. I look forward to it. Talking about Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and as I said, I'll get your thoughts on season prediction maybe if you want to do it at the end of our conversation here. I was going to lead with Tom Brady. As I told you off air, everything's through all season, but we got some news. We're recording this on Thursday for everybody wondering that Tom Brady's taking a leave of absence from the team. Ian Rappaport, I saw the report on Twitter talking about Tom Brady. He expected to be back after the August 20th preseason game. They expect him to be back week 1. This story, and we're talking about probably it's an hour old when me and you were talking about it, but is this something to be concerned about, or is it much to do about nothing in your opinion?
I don't know if it's something to be concerned about per se, but I also don't think it's much ado about nothing either. I think it's somewhere in the middle. If anybody in the history of the NFL, if any starting quarterback has earned the right to do this, it's Tom Brady, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, I know about as much as you know, and I know about as much as what Todd Bowles said to the media after practice today, and I know what Ian Rappaport has reported, that this seems like it was a pre-planned thing that the Bucs knew about ahead of time, and that it basically has to do with a work-life balance. You could be purely speculating on what it is. Could he be filming a movie or something like that? Could he just be on vacation with his family? Who knows? Obviously, I think that this was something that was probably planned during his short retirement, and then he comes back. So this is something that, was pre-planned. But I will say this, I don't love it. especially considering with the Bucs' depth at wide receiver and the fact that, you know, some of these cuts that are eventually going to be made are based on Tom Brady's relationship with these guys. And he's not going to be around for 10 days of camp. I mean, I didn't expect him to play in the preseason games, but so missing those 2 games is really nothing to me. But not being around the team and at practice with those guys, I don't love. But I mean, like I said, if anybody's earned the right to do this, it is Tom Brady. But I would have liked to see him there getting more reps with some of these wide receivers that obviously he's going to have input into who makes the team, and the situation dealing with because of an injury. Now it'll be 3 new starting offensive linemen on his O-line as well.
Yeah, it's kind of one of them deals with him. He seems like the quarterback. I mean, obviously you're right. I mean, if there's any quarterback in the history of the NFL that deserves the right to do this, it is Tom Brady. But it's also kind of his personality, the way you just feel like he would. And if it's not planned, you get it. It's a family work-life thing, like we talked about, work-life balance, like you talked about. But it is kind of odd for him to want to take some time off. I don't know. Out of all quarterbacks, I just felt he's that grinder. It's always about getting the team better, all about the team. So it is kind of interesting with him, of all quarterbacks, taking time away. It just kind of shocked me that he would be one to do that at this time.
I mean, it is shocking, but it isn't, just simply the fact that he did retire. Like, there was something in his brain that he was not going to do this anymore. And you got to think, like, when maybe one foot's out the door, obviously if Tom Brady's coming back, he's all in. But at the same time, you've got to think that this could be something that was planned. I don't think it'll necessarily hurt the Bucs in the long run whatsoever, because like I said, I don't think he would be playing in these preseason games as it is. And with the preseason games, there'll be a couple less practices that he'll miss. But still, I'm never going to question Tom Brady's work ethic whatsoever after what we've seen through him throughout his career, and the fact that he's 45 years old, and since he's been to Tampa, it looks like there's been absolutely no drop off in terms of his game. Like I said, I just wish he was there to get more reps with some of the new guys that are going to be a part of this offense this season.
Yeah, maybe shocking. Me coming from me was a bad word to use. Maybe surprising a little bit, or maybe that, but not shocking.
Yeah.
But with him, of course, coming into this season, this is the last year on his contract. You're right, he did retire. I guess he got tired of the car line at retirement with the kids and said, "I'm going to come back," after a month of being gone. And of course, Todd Bowles is the head coach now. Bruce Arians is no longer the head coach. He's still with the franchise. But just going into this year, just what's your gut tell you? Do you think could this be his last year?
I think regardless of if it's his last year as an NFL player, I think it's his last year with the Buccaneers. I don't think that Tom Brady is the starting quarterback of the Buccaneers when we're sitting here talking about Bucs training camp in 2023 next year. When the story originally came out with Pro Football Talk, with all of the Dolphins story, and that he was going to go be a player owner for the Dolphins, and the Dolphins were trying to facilitate a trade for him. And originally, everybody, especially around Tampa, was like, "Oh, this is a BS story. This is nothing." I mean, the Dolphins got severe ramifications from the NFL. Their owner got suspended. When Tom was asked about it, when he came back this year, he didn't deny the story. So, do I think that? I don't necessarily think that it will end up being with the Dolphins, especially if Tua Tagovailoa has a good year. But I think that the possibility of Tom wanting to dip his toe into possibly being the first ever player owner in the NFL is a thing. I don't know where that will be, but I don't expect it to be. I don't expect it to be in Tampa. I think there's a good chance that this is just his last year, especially if the Bucs were to win the Super Bowl. But I do think, regardless, this is his last year in Tampa.
which makes everything interesting this week with the joint practices with the Dolphins and their, they were in the preseason game this Saturday with them as well. It's just always fun how them things kind of do work out. Looking at this team, let's break this team down, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And look, what Tom Brady did last year, led the league in passing yards, led the league in touchdown passes. They were the number 2 offense in the National Football League. As you said, Tom Brady has shown he has not taken a step back. If anything, last year he even looked like an improved player, which is you wouldn't think to say at his age, but he is defeating Father Time right now, the only person to ever do it. But obviously they threw the ball a lot last season, and you always see maybe articles or whispers, conversation, maybe him and Bruce Arians didn't always see eye to eye offensively. They made it work. Do you foresee this team being more balanced this season? Maybe not as pass heavy as they were in previous years, because we know that's what Bruce Arians wants to do. But now that he's kind of not there, do you kind of foresee maybe a different looking offense with Tampa Bay?
I mean, Byron Leftwich was still calling the plays. Byron Leftwich was still in charge of it for the most part. And if you look at this football team, I think that the way that they're set up, I still think they're going to be pretty pass heavy. I mean, if you ask Todd Bowles is a defensive guy, and he might want to, be a little bit more smash mouth and run the football just a little bit more. But I think they're still going to be pretty pass heavy. I mean, look at what they did in the offseason and bringing in Russell Gage from Atlanta and signing Julio Jones as well to really shore up this passing attack. Yes, they do lose Rob Gronkowski, but they draft 2 tight ends. They bring in Kyle Rudolph. I mean, you still got Cam Brate, part of this football team as well. I still think that their passing offense is going to be the strength of this offense. Ronald Jones is gone, so this is Leonard Fournette's team as far as it comes to running back. He's going to be more of a bell cow type guy this year. So we'll wait and see. I mean, could Fournette really have a huge year? It's possible, but I do also think that we're going to see a pretty heavy dose of rookie Rachaad White, who the Bucs drafted out of Arizona State this year. He's a great pass-catching running back, so I think that we'll see a lot of him this year. But I think it's still going to be a pretty pass-heavy team, but we could see a little bit more of a running team. It really is. It's such an interesting thing because of the offensive line that you're going into a year with Tom Brady, and you have 3 new starting offensive linemen right in front of him. You still got the bookends as the tackles, but the interior of that offensive line is completely different. So how much you're going to be able to trust, the interior of the offensive line in terms of, run blocking. So it's a very interesting dynamic, but I still think they'll be more pass heavy than run heavy.
And of course, they're bringing Julio Jones, which he made some news this week with a tremendous catch in one of the joint practices and everything going on this week, training camp. When everybody's healthy, when Chris Godwin's back in the swing of things, where do you see Julio Jones' place in the offense?
I think he's a red zone threat that replaces kind of what Gronk was in the red zone. I think that you're still going to. Mike Evans is the number 1 receiver on this football team. No questions asked about it. Godwin is 1A or 1B when he comes back, and he's going to be on the outside. I think Russell Gage is your starting wide receiver in the slot. So I think that basically what Julio is here to do is to create matchup problems in the red zone like Gronk did when he was here, because I don't think Julio is going to be the deep threat that Scotty Miller is. Tyler Johnson has been having a good camp as well. This team is very, very deep in terms of wide receivers. So I think that Julio just adding another weapon in terms of the red zone guy, I think is what his role is. I don't expect Tom Brady to be going to him as much as he did to Antonio Brown last year. I think that Gage would be more as who I look at as the replacement for Brown than Julio Jones.
Obviously, and you brought it up earlier, that the offensive line, 3 new starting offensive linemen for Tom Brady that will be in front of him this season. And, of course, then one of those losses is center Ryan Jensen. He was coming back. He gets hurt. He's going to be out for a while. Had a little scare this week with the backup center at Robert Hainsley. So offensive line, where do you see this group? Because I know they traded for Shaq Mason from New England Patriots, but offensive line, are you concerned with this group? Do you think it's a good group? Just what are your overall thoughts on the guys up front?
I think it's solid, but I think any time when you're dealing with 3 new starters, especially with the injury to Ryan Jensen, who some people consider the best center in the league, I think if there is a concern on the offense, it is the offensive line in terms of just how they meld together. Ali Marpet was a phenomenal left guard for this football team. Great player, great in the locker room, surprising retirement. You mentioned they trade for Shaq Mason. That is a very big deal, a guy that has experience blocking for Tom Brady, and Tom obviously signed off on that to bring him here to Tampa Bay. Center, you mentioned Robert Hainsey, who was here with this football team last year, played center and guard. They drafted him out of Notre Dame. So I think that the Bucs should be solid with Hainsey because a lot of people expected him to compete for one of the other starting guard positions if Jensen wouldn't have gone down for injury. Now, in terms of the other guard position, it's still up in the air as far as who gets it. The Bucs releasing their first depth chart. Aaron Stinney is listed as the starter, and Stinney is a guy who, when Alex Kappa, who left to go to Cincinnati, went down because of an injury during the Super Bowl run, Stinney stepped in and played really well. So he has that experience with Tom Brady, but they also drafted a guy, Luke Gadecki, this year as well, who I think could push for some playing time. But right now, it looks like Stinney and Mason, the more veteran guys, will be on either side of a young player and Robert Hainsey.
On the defense side of the ball, and this is over the last few years been one of the better run defenses in the NFL. They were third versus run last year, but teams threw it a lot on them last year. Most completions out of any team against, they had 445 completions against them, but teams also threw it more than anybody else. About 680 attempts against Tampa Bay. When you look at the defense, of course, I know Ndamukong Suh and JPP, they are gone. So up front, some veterans are out there. Linebackers, you know they're good there. And then secondary, they're pretty solid with Carlton Davis. Like I said, linebacker, Levante David. They're good at those spots. When you look at the defense, is there any concerns, or do you see this team, where do you see the defense at right now going into the season?
So the only thing that I don't understand, one of the biggest head scratchers of the offseason, was the Akeem Hicks signing and just not bringing back Ndamukong Suh when it seemed pretty clear, especially once Brady announced that he was coming back, that he wanted to come back. Ndamukong Suh was very solid for this team, and he doesn't miss games. Akeem Hicks, when he's healthy, he was solid in Chicago, but the guy missed a ton of time. And you paid him about what you would have paid, maybe even a little bit more than what you would have paid to get Suh back. So that one worries me just a little bit. Now, if he is completely healthy, I think that he can come close to what Suh was for this football team. But you always have to be worried about a guy who has missed as much time as he did. In the secondary, I don't love Jordan Whitehead leaving this football team. He was one of the best players on this football team in the playoffs last year. But they do add some veteran depth in the secondary, bringing in a Keanu Neal and a Logan Ryan. And I think Carlton Davis, fresh off of signing his big contract, I think is going to prove this year that he is a true shutdown corner, and people will start to consider him one of the better corners in the NFL. Just for me, the biggest question mark is that Hicks signing, because Jason Pierre-Paul, he was injured a lot, and I think that Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, the guy who they drafted out of Washington in the first round last year, is going to be able to slot in and really bolster up that pass rush along with Shaq Barrett, who they still have. So Hicks is my biggest question mark, and they'll miss the hard-hitting presence of Whitehead a little bit in terms of the secondary, but they added some much-needed depth there and some veteran leadership with Ryan and Neal.
And looking at the NFC South, look, I mean, if anybody is not picking Tampa Bay to win the division, I really need to find out what's going on there. But when you look at the rest of the division, the Saints look like a team that's ready to go on a Super Bowl run, and then you look at, oh, wait, Jameis Winston's going to be the starting quarterback. And then you look at the Falcons and the Panthers. The Falcons rebuild, complete teardown there with the trading of Matt Ryan. That's a team saying, okay, we're rebuilding. In Carolina, we'll see. I mean, I don't think they're going to be that great, but we'll see what Baker Mayfield does. When you look at the division, just where do you see the rest of it when you look past Tampa Bay?
I think that in terms of the entire NFL, the Bucs might be the biggest slam dunk pick in terms of winning the division. New Orleans defense is very solid, but you mentioned it. Jameis Winston is their starting quarterback, and who knows what that team is going to look like without Sean Payton as head coach. So those are some big question marks for me. I think Atlanta is one of the teams that we might be talking about as having the number one draft pick in the NFL draft in 2023. Carolina, do I think that they're going to challenge the Buccaneers? No. Do I think that Carolina could be a fringe playoff contender if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy and Baker Mayfield plays well? Yes, I think that they have a solid roster. The only thing that worries me, the biggest thing, honestly, that worries me with Carolina is the situation with Matt Rule, and that the fact that he kind of seems like a lame duck head coach almost there. So I think I like Carolina's roster. I like what they have. I'm worried about their coaching staff, but I think that if you're asking me to predict right now, I think Carolina could finish second in the division over New Orleans and possibly push for a wild card playoff spot. If that's at 9-8, who knows? But I think that the Bucs are a slam dunk in terms of winning the division.
Look, I've said it. You're not going to see any quarterback play better in Week 1 than Baker Mayfield going up against the Cleveland Browns. That's just my feeling going into that one. That is going to be scorched earth going into that first game of the season for Carolina. But and real quickly, on the Saints, and of course, during Tom Brady's time in the last two seasons, they are 4-1 against Tampa Bay. The one win for Tampa Bay was in the playoffs. What is it about New Orleans that gives the Tampa Bay offense trouble?
It's just the defense and the fact that they can get pressure. They can get pressure up the middle. Cam Jordan has kind of always had Donovan Smith's number on the offensive line as well. And then you want to talk about a guy who gives Mike Evans some trouble. It's Marshawn Lattimore. Is a corner who's given Mike Evans trouble, on and off the field. People remember the fight they got into after Jameis Winston tapped him on the helmet back when Jameis was the starting quarterback here in Tampa Bay. So it's just a case of matchups. But last year with Trevor Siemian as quarterback when Jameis Winston went down, the Bucs lost to him, and then no one wants to remember that Sunday night game towards the end of the season at Raymond James Stadium. So it's just the way that the defense matches up. It's a rivalry game, that type of deal. But as you mentioned, the most important game that those two teams have played since Tom Brady has been in Tampa, the Bucs beat them in the Superdome.
That's it. The retirement of Drew Brees. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be honest with you. When he announced he was leaving NBC, I was like, is he about to come out of retirement and come back to the Saints? But I'm glad he didn't. Drew Brees, his arm is done. He can't push the ball down the field anymore. But I was still thinking, I was like, is he thinking about it? But I don't know. That wouldn't have swayed me much with them. But it still was one of the things with Drew Brees. But yeah. So I told you at the beginning of our conversation, I think Tampa Bay is going to the Super Bowl this year. They are my NFC pick. Now I'm not asking you to call. You don't have to call them for NFC champs if you don't want to. But just what are your overall expectations this season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
There's a list of 3 teams in the NFC that I think can go to a Super Bowl. The defending Super Bowl champions, the Rams, the Buccaneers, and the Packers. If the Super Bowl representative from the NFC is not one of those 3 teams, I would be very surprised. The 4th team that I think could possibly greatly improve and possibly push to get there may be the Arizona Cardinals. But I don't see it with Dallas or any of the other teams in the NFC East. Don't see it with any of the other teams in the NFC North. And obviously, we just talked about the NFC South. So you look at those 3 teams, they better. I don't think so. They just lost Devontae Adams, one of the best receivers in the league. Are the Bucs better? I don't know, because you're dealing with a situation in terms of the offensive line. Did the Rams hugely upgrade their team? I don't know, but they beat the Bucs in Tampa last year in the playoffs. So I think we could see a Bucs-Rams NFC championship. Would I maybe favor the Rams? You're asking me here in August, probably, but you can never bet against Tom Brady in a one-game situation, and I think that the Bucs are a talented enough team to get there once again.
Look, as a Packer fan, if they meet up with them in the NFC Championship, just go ahead and put them in the Super Bowl, because we know they can't get past that game in the playoffs. But anyways, Trey, I do appreciate you coming on the show, talking Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I hope we can do this again throughout, maybe a couple times throughout the season. But if the listeners wanted to follow you online, where can they find you, and where can they check out the podcast?
You can follow me on Twitter at TD Experience. Check out BucsNation.com, and then just search Bucs Nation Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, iHeart. We're there, all of them, and just check us out.
All right, sounds good, Trey. Once again, appreciate the time, and look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
For sure.
All right, everybody. Once again, thanks to Trey Downey for coming on this edition of the show. Talk all things Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We talked about the NFC South there. Yeah, like I said there, I like Tampa Bay. I'll go and say, if everybody hasn't heard it, I like the Buffalo Bills to come out of the AFC. I think Buffalo's going to win the Super Bowl, but I do think they'll go against Tampa Bay. That's kind of my picks there. But he's right. There's really three Super Bowl contenders in the NFC, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Rams, and then the Green Bay Packers. And after that, I don't trust Kyler Murray. I don't trust Cliff Kingsbury. He's shown in college and NFL his teams start hot, but then they fall apart into the year. Until that changes, I'm not going to trust them going to a postseason situation. Those are the three teams in the NFC that are contenders. And then also in the AFC, man, that thing's loaded. You got the Buffalo Bills in the East. The North, we'll see what you got. The Bengals, they'll be up there. Can't ever count the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. Browns and Steelers. Yeah, we ain't gonna get into all that. I like the Colts in the South, and then in the West. I mean, Denver, the Raiders, the Chargers. Actually, the Chiefs may be taking a step back on that side, but the AFC is straight up loaded. But that's kind of how I see it. And like you said, Buccaneers winning the South is pretty much a slam dunk. We'll see how this team shapes up though as we go on into the season with Tom Brady hiatus there in training camp. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan Podcast. Be back on Monday. We'll be talking Arkansas football with Wes Pruitt, last one college football colleague. So we'll be jumping in to that on Monday's podcast. We'll be talking some Kentucky football next Wednesday. And then next Friday, Blake Lovell will be joining me to talk about the AFC South. So Tennessee Titan fans, get ready. I think I have one Jacksonville Jaguar fan that listens to the show. So we'll jump into that as well. And then, it'll be fun throughout the week. So that's going to do it. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you for all the people who joined on the live stream on YouTube on this Friday morning. Had a few people jump in. No comments. Got to get you guys to start commenting on the show. That's the part that we got to get situated. But I'm sure keep building, keep growing, keep consistent, and we'll get there. We'll get there with some more interaction from you guys moving forward. But anyways, I'm going to get out of here. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Check it out over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and leave a comment on the video. I'll read it on a future edition of the show. Just because you're not watching live does not mean you can't leave a comment. And you can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. All right, guys. Hope, like I said, once again, have a great weekend. Preseason football this weekend. You got baseball. You got plenty of sports to watch this weekend. But anyways, until next time. Bye-bye.